My name is Katie Kangas of Pask Architecture. I am here with Kaitlin Schalow.
Hi everyone, I'm Kaitlin Schalow, architect at HGA and current co-chair of the Women in Architecture Committee for AIA Minnesota.
We are preparing for the AIA Minnesota Conference 2023, and we are here with Ellie Ziaie. This year, for our networking session at the conference, we are talking about women's search for meaning in and beyond professional practice. And so, Ellie, tell us your name and your role and where you practice.
Thank you for having me. My name is Ellie Ziaie, and I'm an architect at BKV Group. I have been at that firm for 12 and a half years since I was a student intern.
Yes. And so where do you find inspiration lately?
Since graduating from my master's degree, I really entered the world of DEI sort of conversations, community engagement discussions, the concept of designing with the community. And so I've done a lot of Zoom meetings, from different chapters, the work that revolved around this area. Recently, I've got a chance to work with some of our mission-driven clients and specifically shelters. And so the world of trauma-informed design has been really great to tap into and learn more about. And then nature, I just keep going back to nature as an inspiration and something that I have enjoyed as I'm aging.
I love that you're practicing in that area. It sounds like that nature inspiration is probably a great healing aspect that you can bring to that design table. Very cool. Sure. Oh, so you talked about aging. 12 and a half years. Come on, Ellie. We met back in grad school. We don't need to put decades on it. Tell us a little bit about your life journey.
I call myself not first generation and not second generation immigrant. So it's this weird 1.5 generation immigrant. So I moved to the US with my parents when I was a teenager and really started living here, went to college here, took a few years off between undergrad and grad. Worked for a few years in between and then went back for grad school. Just the same ups and downs of personal life. And I want to share that out there because I know that there's a lot of women who would relate. Like I recently went through a separation, going through divorce, and it's great to see people succeeding and posting on LinkedIn, but I just want to be like really transparent too, that all of our lives have their own ups and downs and we all go through different things. And sometimes it's actually wonderful to connect through those things as well.
Could you maybe give us a little bit more about the recent update you're sharing about this that you've been going through, but also you've had recent successes as well. So what got you involved in AIA with the Next to Lead, and now you've earned the Next Generation Award here in Minnesota for 2023?
Yeah, I think it was a few years ago now that the AIA National had put out a call out there for women with diverse backgrounds and at least 5 years of experience to apply to this program that was called the Next to Lead program. And it was first of its kind, really trying to get more diverse women to the table, specifically the AIA, to be voices, those diverse voices. And then they said that they have selected 17 women from all over the country. The rest is kind of history.
I think it's great that in the highs and lows, personal and professional, you're finding those colleagues and you're finding those co-mentors. That support system seems so incredibly valuable when you're trying to define that meaning in your life and what you put your time into. So what gets you excited about projects or your team or your work beyond practice?
Somebody else had said that when they applied for the Young Architect Award, that you feel like you're doing all these random things in your life and your professional life and your personal life. And then by doing these submissions, you find this like common thread and it puts it together for you. And when I did that, I had such a reflection of like, where is this coming from? This wanting to provide service, whether that's to the community, whether that's to the profession, and just helping others. And then I realized, this is something that's probably ingrained in me from generations past. I looked at my grandparents and how they were serving the public then, and my parents, and how we were coming from a family of educators. And it totally made sense why I kept wanting to be part of different mentorship programs and do things for our community, both locally and nationally. So it all kind of came together. I love being part of that team and supporting that team. even in the sense of leading, I feel like I want to be the one that's behind everybody, kind of pushing the team forward and really helping with all the juggling things that the team is leading and kind of running into.
The way you're starting to describe leadership is becoming a through line with the women we've invited this. Do you feel like the way that you're tackling it personally helps you talk with your clients and the people that you're serving through work?
It absolutely does. And even like other personal issues that I've gone through, I feel like I'm able to connect with people on a different level and just feel for them. One example that comes to my mind is I run our pro bono entity within BKV, which is called BKV Workshop. I was the co-founder of it. We've been going for 7 years now. In the midst of the pandemic, somebody brought something to our attention and said, such and such entity really needs help. So we spoke with them and wanting to, help them through our pro bono wing. It was an immigrant woman who had started a nonprofit. They needed services to renovate their office project. I connected with them because I understand the struggle that immigrants go through, the language barriers, the racism, right? After that call, like all of us wanted to do that project for them. So that was one thing. And the next was, Ellie, you got to lead this project because you already have a connection and you understand this client. So I think that these things do connect me to certain people and make me understand the variety and the struggles that people have in their life.
How do you start to define what leadership is and the type of leader you would like to be?
Good leaders usually have a vision of where we're heading. They might have it more clear than others. The other thing, going through some of these leadership programs, specifically the Next to Lead, we did a bunch of personality tests to understand what our strengths are and maybe what we needed to work on. And one thing I learned is that I'm a good team builder. I'm able to put a good team together. And I knew that I was a people connector to begin with. So that was really interesting to see come through in that test. And then the other thing, I think we're kind of done with like this master architect, one person knows it all. This generation and the time we're in, it's all about collaboration. The other aspect that leaders should have is consensus building, right? Getting to a conclusion from that more group thinking and how do we push forward from where we're at. And then I think another aspect is to be inspiring and empowering others to know that everybody can lead from where they are and really doing that leadership through serving the community. And I think that is something that is really rewarding.
What part of it is most rewarding?
So my capstone project this year for the Next to Lead program has been to work with the MAF committee to come up with a mentorship program that connected the Wigington scholars together, as well as connect them to mentors who could hold their hand and really introduce them to the community and to be there with them. What I really needed to do in this program, I felt was a little bit different than the other mentorship programs that existed. So I came up with this idea of group of mentors mentoring a group of the students. So that way the students got to create a cohort that were able to do mentorship within their own group, but also really seek out the mentors. I was able to create this program very specific to the needs. That was just so rewarding. And I hope that the students really have a good experience.
Why is having influence so important for you as a leader?
I think that having influence helps with that consensus building. Once everybody comes together and puts their head together, collaborates, to build consensus, you need a level of trust to the team members and the community members, depending on, which team you're thinking about. As I said, everybody could lead from where they're at. I think that's the most interesting thing about that leadership, that you don't need to be at the top to be leading. I really think about how can I help somebody else to do their job better? And that person could be a colleague or it could be a manager. They could be higher up even in the chain. So how can I help so that everybody else is also succeeding?
Wow, that sounds like 2 jobs, to be doing your own work, but also to be that sort of genuine support to others. Do you ever feel like stretched by that?
Yeah, I think working on a larger firm and larger projects, we have a bigger team. So I think everybody's doing something, and sometimes you get something done faster and then some things end up changing throughout the project. People need help. So we're constantly shifting responsibilities to different team members depending on who's stretched thin. But what's interesting about that is there's our day job that we do, and then the extracurricular activities that we like to do. So for me, it has been the AIA, the MAF this year. And then there's also our community, right? Like, I'm very connected to the immigrant community that's here, and we constantly get new people that need new help and kind of need to be brought into the community. This is how things are done in the US. And, people are overwhelmed. And so I do a lot of that sort of work as well.
I feel like you've already touched on the core of our topic about how do you currently find purpose and meaning in your life? How do you put that into words? What is giving you energy? What is driving you forward?
I think it's really the people. I remember during the pandemic just sitting at home and being like, oh, I really miss my coworkers. Or I'll go on like these little mini vacations, but I'm working remotely during those. And by the end of the week, I'm like, I miss my coworkers. I miss my team. Like, it's wonderful being in, such and such exotic city, but I really miss the people. I truly feel like I'm part of a work family, and same with my clients. I care for them, and I care for them to succeed and to get to their mission, because they're also serving parts of our community, really helping others, whether that's team members, community members. And honestly, it's all intertwined. My volunteering is kind of intertwined with my personal life, and there's no way for me to mentor and not be my genuine self. That's the beauty. And I think that maybe wasn't possible in the traditional sense. And I think that's what a lot of women bring. And I hope that more women bring that, especially as they lead, that they lead with integrity and they lead with their emotions. And we don't try to mimic what the manly architecture world used to be.
For our audio listeners, which is everyone, Kaitlin is doing snaps. I'm curious because it sounds like everyone almost becomes family to you. So you mentioned your own family earlier. What example did your grandparents set and your parents set? What impact did they have in their communities specifically that gave you this, maybe not roadmap, but you saw the actions that they took and whether or not that inspired you?
I'm honestly one of the younger grandchildren, but both of my grandparents were really prominent people in the communities that they were part of. One of them owned a bookshop. A lot of the kids growing up in that era remember my grandpa and him recommending books to them and going and getting their pencils and notebooks from. He is this nostalgic person that's no longer with us, but the appreciation people had for him just increased my respect level as I was growing up, understanding that who he was. My other grandpa he was the person that really brought education to this portion of the country. And so he was traveling back and forth and really visiting schools and encouraging people to send their kids to schools. Again, big on education. A lot of people have known him through that effort and really appreciated the level of service that he had given. Just carrying those two names has got me very far in our community because people still have memories and the past generation knows these people really well. My dad was an educator himself. He was a math professor and he started a university sort of math department with his colleagues in a less fortunate part of Iran. And so he was the initiator. And so basically they had nothing. They had to build from scratch. And within a few years, they became one of the best universities. And they even were the first program to have a PhD in Iran from mathematics. And then my mom was a nurse. She served many years before I was born. Iran went through war, and so they had to do a lot with very little resources, serve community, and to have people survive the rough times that Iran went through at that time. And so I think it's some of those things that really kind of puts it to perspective for me, and to know that some of these values are really ingrained. And then just their stories of growing up is so different than ours. There were so very little resources, and my grandmothers were both homemakers. Life wasn't easy, and they had, one side had 6 kids, the other had 8. That's a lot of kids to be feeding and, you know, all of that. But they also were the ones sewing their clothing and knitting their clothing. And my mom tells me stories of how my grandmother, after a few years that she would wear her knit sweater, it'd be either too small or it would be falling apart, and she would unwind it and reknit it so that they could reuse the resource that they had available to them, right? I sometimes am like, you know, really proud of myself for being resourceful, but honestly, we're not a very sustainable generation. We're not as resourceful as our past generations, but yet we sit here and talk about sustainability and resilience. I hope we can tap onto some of those resources and, you know, what they did in the past to be able to get our feet back under ourselves again and to reverse the damage that has been done in our generation. They were all serving different people in a lot tougher times. We're fortunate not to be in those tough times anymore. There's still a lot of need. And one of the reasons that I feel like I like to serve in a pro bono capacity is to extend our reach as architects and designers to be able to serve others who may not think that they can have that resource, and they may not have that reach, but really allow them to, and open the design opportunities for them, because it can transform the world.
And you were able to co-found the BKV Pro Bono Group 7 years ago. So early in a career to be able to do that, only working there for 5 years and being able to make that sort of change happen.
Yeah. Just a note about the BKV Workshop. Those conversations were really inspired for me in school by Jim Lutz and Tom Fisher. They kept talking about how there's pro bono lawyers and how our healthcare system is able to serve so many people, but why aren't designers and architects able to do that? So he really tasked our generation with figuring that out. And I felt like this could be a model that is in the larger firms to be able to make the work happen. And there were 3 other guys that were having conversations, and I was in grad school taking this public interest class, and they involved me, and, you know, we really worked on the idea together and then really presented to the board after 6 months. We had a really robust presentation of why the firm should support the effort. They had awesome comments for us, right? When you're developing an idea, you think, oh, they're going to shut it off. You know, this is what they're going to say. But in reality, they were so supportive. And they said, these are exactly the reasons we started a firm, you know, but we're so busy running the firm now that we forget and can't do that. So we love that you guys want to lead and want to do this effort. So they really appreciated it and supported it. And up to this day, like, it would not be possible without their support, obviously. But that said, how has the meaning changed over the course of my career? I think that meaning is really dynamic and really constantly changing. I think initially it was being, you know, when I was an intern, I just loved being part of a team and being able to collaborate and be able to help on projects. But I feel like now that has grown to being able to be part of the community and having that larger reach and serving community members who otherwise wouldn't have access. I think that's kind of the piece of the puzzle for me, and that this is the moment of time that we live together and we're able to give to each other.
That's incredible. And it's grown so fast for you. So what do you think the role of mentorship has had in shaping your career?
I feel like I've had the best mentors, professors, you know, obviously parents as the core. Speaking up and thinking outside the box, I think those are things that we learn from our environment. There is this wonderful woman who actually hired me and was my boss at BKV for years before she left and went to a different firm. There's been a few moments in my career that others around me that have seen me feel like, oh, she is turning into her mentor. So that's interesting that others see that. It might be that we have similar personalities, but it might be that I'm just soaking it up because she's just so amazing and awesome and supporting other women, supporting other team members, and really driven. I think mentorship has a huge effect on everybody. And I think we soak up what's in our environment.
And to that point of supporting women in the profession, there are pinch points in this path to architectural education that some women drop out. And so what are some of your thoughts on retaining female talent in this industry?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting thought. And I think that a lot of the trends we're seeing is more transparency in the firms, more flexibility in the firms. I am surprised that, women have had to quit architecture in general, working as an architect, if they want it to be part-time, right? Like, women should not have to make that decision. If they want to work part-time, we should allow for that. And so I'm excited for all of the new guidelines that are coming out, whether that's on the JUST label or looking at equity for women and men across the disciplines, to make sure that we are equal. And that way, I think that we should lessen that pinch point. And I think one podcast I was listening to talks about how if we design a city for elders and women to be safe, then we have taken care of everybody. So I hope that with us designing firms and practices that make women or people of color comfortable, it allows the men to also be more comfortable, whether that's flexibility, or I feel like there might have been some toxic masculinity before in the profession. And I think that with more women at the table, we're able to push that aside more easily. We're happy to be the ones to say, yeah, it's because of women, but I hope that it just creates a better environment for all.
I feel like it sounds a bit like when we talked to Sarah St. Louis, Designing Towards Accessibility, where she said designing towards accessibility creates a better quality design for everyone. Ellie's talking about designing firms to be that accepting environment and that supportive environment, which elevates everyone. We all benefit from richer soil. Well, to start wrapping things up, is there anything else that we haven't touched on that you'd like to share?
Just that I love seeing the diversity of people on our projects, in our communities. And I hope that everybody feels that they're welcome to bring their full self to the work, to the community, and that we keep growing as a society to be more accepting of people, no matter their background. So.
Thank you for joining us. This interview was prepared for the Women's Search for Meaning in and Beyond Architecture session. The networking portion of this session will take place on November 13th at the AIA Minnesota 2023 Conference on Architecture. The AIA Women in Architecture Committee prepared this mini-series to share the stories of 6 women and their unique paths into leadership. Our hope is to inspire your own search for meaning in and beyond architectural practice.